Hi, welcome to the Career Sprints YouTube channel. This is Rohit, and we like to produce content that helps you with your professional development and continuous learning. Now, this video is related to the content around the PMBOK 7th edition, and in today's video, I'd like to talk about two concepts that further contribute to the delivery of value by an organization. So these are sections 2.4 and 2.5 from the standards of project management. So the first concept that I want to talk about is the project environment. So when we talk about the project environment, we need to understand that any project does not exist in a vacuum, right? Projects are born inside an organization, and a project will obviously be influenced by internal and external factors, both internal factors of the organization and factors that exist outside of the organization. Now, whether the factor is internal or the factor is external, they would both have either a positive or a negative or maybe even a neutral impact on the project characteristics or the project stakeholders or the project teams in general, or the project performance as well, right? So when we talk about internal factors, one of the first things that we need to understand is that what exactly falls under internal factors. So under internal factors, we have artifacts. So artifacts could be, for instance, documents that you produce within the organization. We have practices. So practices can be seen as ways of working or different ways that you work within the organization. And then you have internal knowledge. So internal knowledge is knowledge that is not that is not really expressed by people, or it can even be expressed by people. So if it is documented somewhere, maybe in a database or in some other form, then it would be a part of your information repository. Or it could also be tacit knowledge, which is embedded in the heads of people, and you know, to get that information out, you would need to talk to the person, right? Or you would need to call for a meeting where, you know, people would be brainstorming and those ideas and experiences would start pouring out. So let's look at some of the internal environmental factors that influence a project either positively or negatively, or maybe even neutrally. So let's first talk about process assets, right? So you can think of process assets as something similar to what we did in the PMBOK 6th edition, which is organizational process assets. So process assets, like it says here, it includes tools, it includes methodologies, it includes approaches, it includes templates, frameworks, patterns, or even PMO resources. And as the name suggests, it's a process asset. So it's an asset that is born out of carrying out a particular process. So in your organization, you carry out different kinds of processes related to finance, related to marketing, related to project management, related to capturing of information, related to disseminating information, or carrying out a specific task in your organization. So when you're building these processes, when you're working through these processes, you would come up with certain data, you would identify certain issues, and maybe you would document them somewhere, and they in turn get documented in tools, or they turn into methodologies or approaches or better ways of working, and that basically is your process assets. Then you have documents related to governance. So governance related documentation would be anything that basically enables the company to have oversight over the project or over the portfolios or the programs that are running within the organization. So those are governance documents. Then data assets would be any kind of databases that exist. So this could be like customer related databases or internal employee related databases that would exist in your organization. So anything that captures data, and when you turn that data into more processed information from which insights can be drawn, that is basically an example of a data asset, right? Then you have knowledge assets. So like I explained earlier, we have two types of knowledge. We have knowledge that is captured in databases, or in Excel sheets, or in knowledge bases, and there is information that is unspoken, or like it's only spoken about when you start discussing a topic with someone. So that basically is like tacit knowledge. That knowledge will only be expressed by people when you talk to them. So that's an example of a knowledge asset. Then you have security and safety. So security and safety would include safety measures or security measures, and these would be things like data protection and confidentiality and privacy and proprietary secrets, like company financial information, which should not be revealed to a lot of people in the organization, and so on and so forth. And one thing that I want to point out before we move on further is that when we talk about the project environment and we talk about internal and external factors that influence the project environment, this is akin to talking about enterprise environmental factors that we did in the 6th edition of the PMBOK. So if you remember the 6th edition of the PMBOK, or if you were preparing for PMP last year and you studied the 6th edition, you would know that they had a concept called enterprise environmental factors. So this internal environment section and external environment section is similar to, or is akin to, the EEF section in the 6th edition. So moving on, we have organizational culture, structure and governance. We have geographic distribution of facilities and resources. We have infrastructure. We have information technology software. We have resource availability and employee capability. Now, if you would notice, there's a pink arrow that is pointing at all these different points that I just read. The reason why I've put a pink arrow here is because I just want to indicate that these were also a part of enterprise environmental factors in the 6th edition of the PMBOK. So broadly, you get an understanding that any factor that is internal to the organization, and there are many factors that are internal to the organization: where the organization is located, what country it's operating in, what kind of people work in the organization, what kind of resources are available, what kind of capabilities people have in the company. All of these factors, anything that's inside the organization, can have an impact on your project. Now we did internal environments, and now we have external environment as well. So external environmental factors are all the factors that exist outside of your organization. So those could be political factors or economic factors or social factors or technological, legal, as well as environmental. So they've given you some specific examples of external factors. So they are, for instance, marketplace conditions, and marketplace conditions would be, for example, what your competitor is doing in the industry that you're in. What market share do you have? What market share does your competitor have? What is the level of brand recognition? Like, do people really know you, or you are a newbie in the industry? Then you have social and cultural influences, which are obviously the politics of your country, whether you're a democratic country or, you have another form of political governance system there. The regional customs and the culture and the traditions that is generally prevalent in the country as well, that would also have an impact on your project. The regulatory environment. So, this would be an example of all the industry norms and regulations that you may want to adhere to. So, for instance, you have the Sarbanes-Oxley Act, in the United States, which was actually crafted after a bunch of corporate scandals that happened. So this was just to strengthen the level of transparency that companies need to maintain with the general public. So you need to ensure that whatever industry you're in, you adhere to the regulation of the industry that you operate in. And then you have commercial databases, you have academic research, you have industry standards, you have financial considerations. So financial considerations, for instance, would include things like inflation, like taxes, or tariffs, or the exchange rates. What is the value of your currency against another currency that you may be trading in. So that is also something that needs to be taken into consideration. And the physical environment, so the weather conditions. For example, you may be living in a warm country, or you may be living in a country which is really, really cold. So the type of weather and the type of climate that's there, that also has an impact on the project that you're doing, right? Many projects are physical and they are not only digital. So that does have an impact on the weather conditions do have an impact, or the physical environment does have an impact on the physical product as well. Now, moving on, I want to talk a little bit about product management, right? So, this is a section that has been newly introduced as part of the PMBOK 7th edition, where they go and touch upon product management as such, and how it contributes to the delivery of value. So when we talk about product management, we need to first look at what the definition of a product is. So PMI defines a product as an artifact that is produced is quantifiable and can be either an end item itself or a component item. So a product could be anything. It could be a physical product, it could be a digital product, it could be a combination of a physical product and a service. So, the lines of where a service becomes a product and how products are packaged and sold as services, they kind of blur. So these lines blur. So irrespective of the industry that you're in, whatever product you're producing, at the end of the day, that product could either be the end product that the end user is going to use, or it could be a part of a bigger product, right? So it could be a component product of a bigger product. So now that we've spoken about products, we'll talk about product management. So product management is primarily about integration of people, data, processes, and business systems to create, maintain, and develop a product or service throughout its life cycle. So the point here is that every product has a life cycle, right? So a product is born, then a product is built, and then the product may be sold in the market, and the product may undergo many different iterations or versions of it until it reaches a point where the product starts becoming more and more obsolete, and other products kind of take over, and that product is retired. So throughout this entire journey of the product, a product needs to be a product needs to be maintained, right? A product needs to have different versions, and a product needs to basically be able to function in a way the customers want it to function. So product managers are primarily responsible for product management, or product owners are also responsible for product management, and their primary job is to work with stakeholders, gather requirements from stakeholders, prioritize those requirements, and then build it into the product so that the product is as close as to what a customer really desires from it, right? So we spoke about product management, we spoke about product lifecycle. So let's now look at an example or a diagram of a product and what are the different phases that it goes through. So you can see here in the diagram in figure 2.4 that a product has different phases. So you have the introduction phase, you have the growth phase, you have the maturity phase, and you have the decline and retirement phase. And then when the product is initially introduced, not many people know about it. So a product sales may be lower, or they may be just spreading awareness about the product. So people are getting to know about it. So there is initial creation, and when the initial creation of the product happens, it is more of a rudimentary product. It could be like a minimum viable product that you have created, which is good enough to be taken to the market. But then as the product starts becoming more and more popular, and as years go by, you may start adding more features to the product as well, right? So if you see, you can basically enhance the product through different projects. So you can have one project which is used for initial creation, you can have another project for adding more features, you can have another project for adding further features and revisions and enhancements and so on and so forth, until you reach a point where the product becomes obsolete or starts becoming obsolete, or it starts facing stiff competition, and eventually you have to retire the product. So products can be grown, or the many projects can be carried out throughout the life cycle of a particular product, right? And products can the product life cycle can also span through different programs. So if you see, they've shown you that project 1, project 2, and project 3 are part of program A, which is basically a bigger project, right? Program is a collection of related projects. So once program A is over, then they moved on to program B, and in program B they did further revisions, and finally when program B was over, they retired the product. So basically projects can span through the life cycle of a product. Products can be basically a part of a program, and multiple programs can make up a portfolio as well. Now let's look at the forms in which a product can exist. So like it says, product management can exist in different forms. So the first form that we will talk about is program management within a product lifecycle. So it goes on to say this approach incorporates related projects, subsidiary programs, and program activities. So what they're basically trying to say here is that you have the product lifecycle, right? And the product can live for a very, very long time, right? I mean, look at the iPhone. The first iteration of the iPhone came in 2007, and we still are using iPhones. We are using whatever, iPhone 11 or 12, and it has undergone many different versions, and it has grown to be what it is today, right? So many projects could have been carried out throughout the life of the iPhone to bring it to its present state, right? So you can have the product lifecycle, and multiple programs and projects can span through the product lifecycle as well. Next, it says project management within a product lifecycle. So it says this approach oversees development and maturing of product capabilities as an ongoing business activity. So similar to the previous point where we said that you can have several programs and projects that can grow the product. You can have the product lifecycle that spans many years, and you can have multiple projects that can be carried out to grow the product. Or even if you're not doing projects, you can grow the product incrementally as part of business operations. So you don't always necessarily have to carry out a project. You can make incremental improvements to the product and grow it as part of your ongoing business activity too. And then finally, you can have multiple programs or projects, and the product lifecycle can live within those programs or projects. So it says this approach applies the full product lifecycle within the purview and boundaries of a given program. So one example of this could be, for example, let's say if you're creating a highway network in a large country, maybe you're building a transnational highway, and you're going to connect multiple parts of the country, maybe a couple of thousands of kilometers. Now that is a program that probably would, or a product that would be built over many years, right? So you can have multiple programs, right, that would result in building of that particular product. Like if we consider the highway to be a product, for instance. So essentially the product life cycle of the transnational highway exists within multiple programs and projects that would be carried out over many years. So these are different considerations or aspects that you need to remember about product management. And one of the main things to understand is that projects and products and product management as such, they both intersperse with each other, and they kind of intersect with each other. So products can be built as part of projects can be carried out throughout the life cycle of a product. It doesn't really matter how it's done. What eventually matters is that the product is built, the product is released, and the company is able to enhance and grow the product and be able to make it commercially viable, and be able to increase its profits if it's a profit maximizing organization.